We are back with more college football coverage, and to get straight into it, we have number 1 Ohio State at number 17 Illinois for the Battle of the Illabuck. It's a orange-colored turtle statue. Anyways, there have been a lot of different developments in it. It's mostly been dominated by Ohio State in this century, at least, but Illinois did get their last win against the Buckeyes in 2007 when they were also the number 1 ranked team in the nation. So they were looking to get their first win against the team from that point in what was also their first ranked matchup against each other since 2001. A lot of potential stakes on the line, especially with Altmyer making that clear himself. They mentioned on like a graphic during the game that he was essentially saying like, hey, they have come here to our house to play against us. So you definitely needed to like just make it tough on an opponent like this. That's always what you have to do against an undefeated team when you possess home field advantage. It's as simple as that. And to be honest, I mean, even though the Buckeyes offense was solid enough on this first possession, once they got in the red zone, they held Bo Jackson Jr. in check. They mentioned that he led the nation in terms of like freshman running backs in yards per game. And while he did get a good chunk of yardage here, again, they tightened up when they needed to the most, and they kept everything short to force a fourth down. But Ohio State would get on the board anyways with a field goal. Even though their defense would help them at different points in this ball game, at least give them a shot. No favors were done for them on the opposite side of the football. And it's not to say that Altmyer himself had a completely terrible game, but I don't know, a lot of Illinois' offense for a while was predictable. Like, take the literal interception on this play here, for example. And I mean, I guess you have to give credit to the Ohio State defense for snuffing it out. But essentially, on third down, you had to have figured that they were going to look Hank Beatty's way. Now, this dude did have a solid game against Indiana in what ended up being a blowout, but it looks as though he's been one of their more reliable wide receivers. And last week against Purdue, this is the same person that had 5 receptions for like 186 yards or something. You knew that they were going to try to get him going early and often. And while the Ohio State defense would do a good job of covering him, that must not have fazed Illinois enough to not give him the ball in a favorable situation like that. Unfortunately for them, Jermaine Matthews Jr., with just yet another timely swat, got his hand right at the point of impact. The ball got swatted up and it fell into the hands of one of the linebackers in Pierce for a truly back-breaking interception. Knowing that you deferred to the second half and that you didn't allow Ohio State to maximize their opportunity there, you give them a short field to work with. And in no short order, it would eventually be C.J. Donaldson Jr. just owning pretty much the entire drive and punching it in for a touchdown, which is something that he's been accustomed to at this point. In fact, with that touchdown, that would make him the second most prolific scorer of rushing touchdowns in the nation in his career, behind only Nick Singleton of Penn State. The defense of Ohio State has obviously been tremendous. In fact, the 25 points that were still given up at this point of the game was the 5th fewest allowed through the first 5 games of a college football season in history. And that would not really change for Illinois just yet. They tried to establish a little bit of their rushing attack with Lafferty getting 16-yard pickup here, but they, again, got all over it immediately. And when third down came, they threw the ball Beatty's way yet again. They were not having that shit whatsoever. It's crazy, too, because Autzen as well was a player to watch in this game. Like, we know that last season, even though he plays a physical brand of coverage, we know that this man would get baited into multiple stupid penalties last year. It was a huge issue, even with the defense still being good, in spite of all that. But he, for the most part, had a much cleaner go in this one. And yes, he did get away with a few, but honestly, compared to the atrocity he put on display last season, I'll fucking take it. Like, real stuff, man. Okay, so very interesting stuff would come forth next. Like, Illinois' defense, again, you have to credit them. Even when it looked as though Ohio State could truly pull away as quickly as possible, they prevented much of that from really happening. And you do have to give credit on the deflection here, because honestly, I thought Jeremiah Smith caught this pass on 3rd and 4 to open up the second quarter. And yet, again, the Illinois cornerback here stuck with the play the entire time. It looked like he still had control, but you got to survive the ground fully. And as they were both rising back up, he was losing control. Ball gets knocked out. And, Illinois, trusting their guy, they challenge the call. And it gets overturned. So they punt. Illinois honestly had a decent drive here, but I've been seeing a lot of these weird drives. I mean, at the same slate of games, rather, to tie it in a little bit, you've had drives that have gone 17 plays and 40 yards, taking 9 minutes off the fucking clock, and it wouldn't be any different in this case, as this was a 10-play, 22-yard drive. But there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that, okay? I don't know how to explain this shit. They did get very close to picking up a different third down conversion here. They already converted on 4th and 1 to extend their drive. But when it got to this 3rd and 7 here, the tight end actually made a decent play. They had initially ruled that Autzen forced this Rusk person out. He still managed to box him out and get the catch, but they had to check this call again, because when you slow it down, obviously when you're pushed out and you reestablish yourself in that situation, they're going to allow that to be called a catch. But Rusk didn't fully reestablish himself because his damn right toe was still on the white chalk as he was trying to go up for the catch. So with that in mind, again, as they were reviewing it, they noted this, and they overturned the ruling of illegal catch. So then Illinois goes on and punts the ball, right? Right? Well, they don't even get a chance to do that, because the punter here, first of all, I don't even know what the fuck was going on. He was doing all this shimmy shaking in the fucking background, probably just trying to ease into the punt, I guess. I guess you can't knock that. But then this man fields the snap so low that he literally takes a knee with the ball in his hands. And they blow the play dead right there. Loss of yardage, and you give the Buckeyes another short field on what was a promising drive. Yet again, the Illinois defense, even with Ohio State picking up a first down, back-to-back first downs with both Clarence Haight, the front seven held up strong and forced Ohio State to kick a field goal again. At some point, you had to break through and help your defense out. It wasn't necessarily the worst thing in the world for the Illinois defense. But how are you supposed to pull off an upset like that when you're going to continue to both turn the ball over in stupid ways and then give this team, who's already good as it is, a short field to work with. They clearly didn't learn their lesson, but I honestly can't really say too much about this. Now, one of their running backs in Valentine would fumble the ball, but man, that is credit to the defensive lineman in McDonald on Ohio State. That's credit to him. Like, he goes up and mans up for the tackle and then just rips the fucking ball out of his hands. They were trying to see whether or not he was down, and no, he was not touched. He just slammed him right down to the ground, removing the ball from his grasp, and there was absolutely nothing that Valentine could do about it. In fact, it was kind of bad as well, because not only did he get the ball ripped from him, but he kind of twisted his ankle a little bit too. Again, as much as I can't blame him for losing the ball in that situation, it just, when you add all of that up, it just led to Illinois continuously shooting themselves in the foot here. Like, you cannot give a team like this chance after chance after chance. They're going to make you pay for it. And that is exactly what would happen here is Bo Jackson Jr. would get a screen pass from Saim. And he essentially just skated into the end zone untouched to bring the lead to 20-0. Now, Illinois, after all that, they would actually put together what was their finest drive of the half. And they did it by playing with a lot of tempo, rather. They actually favored giving one of their other wide receivers in Clement the ball and also Colin Dixon. Just picking up a few chunk plays, getting out in space on like screen plays and using like tight formations to set up key blocks to extend for more yardage that way. It was working. They were truly making some progress down there. Before you know it, we hit the 2-minute warning and they were still just moving down the field. And things got interesting here. This play was initially ruled a touchdown, and you had this receiver in Bowick also draw a pass interference penalty. However, upon further review, even though he did catch it, his body was out of bounds. So the, penalty would stand, and then we'd be in a goal-to-go situation, which did not go in favor of the Fighting Illini at all. At all, man. I mean, first off, you had Luke Altmyer try his absolute hardest to get away from Caden Curry. He could not nab them in the backfield for a sack. You had Lafferty get a fucking sweep pass with Altmyer doing a fucking Patrick Mahomes style play right here, and that wasn't enough. Then we get to 3rd and goal, which was pushed back even more because of a false start penalty on one of their own O-linemen. And then the same Bowick person could not hole in this pass from Altmyer on this 3rd down, forcing Illinois to settle for a field goal. And that would essentially be the score at halftime. The Fighting Illini would get another chance to, get a possession here, but Kenyatta Jackson Jr. and Reese would not allow that shit at all. They would start off the 3rd quarter a little promising, though, because you could argue that this is their finest drive of the game, especially when it mattered the most. This is one that they absolutely have to have. And, they got it going immediately. They got Beatty a good catch in. They had Lafferty get a few solid runs in. And then Colin Dixon and, Rusk would also manage to work this team closer and closer into Buckeyes territory to eventually score. This go-to-goal situation was a little crazier, though. And again, still to this point, the Ohio State squad had not allowed a red zone touchdown. They just hadn't, still. And it looked like that was going to remain the case. Because not only did they keep Fagan's gain to a minimum, not only did they stop Beatty just short of the end zone, with Davis and Igbenoghen combining for the tackle with another Ohio State player. But on third down, bro. Oh my gosh. Yo, on third down, bro. I tell you, bro. This shit was wild. Because this man, Altmyer, he was getting pressured and he spun out of the tackle. Damn near makes his way over to score a touchdown. But in comes Sonny Styles. Literally, as he's trying to extend his arm out, keeping him inches short of scoring a touchdown. Just impeccable fucking work. Consistently from that unit in that respect. And it came down to fourth down. Fighting Illini had no choice, they felt, but to try to go for it all here. And yet they pulled out a very smart play. They did. They had Altmyer kind of like, I guess, give Beatty a run. So he hands it off to him. And then Beatty kind of shifts over to his right. Throws and pitches an option to Lafferty. And at that point, you have Caden Curry out on him. He freezes up. And Lafferty just takes full advantage of it. Gets in the end zone for a touchdown. Was a really smart play call. Even though it was tough for the Buckeye squad to give up their first one, I mean, that's a pretty damn good play. There is nothing you could have done about that once it went underway, to be honest. So it was what it was. But now it was Ohio State's turn to go on a long, fulfilling drive of their own. They would also face multiple short conversions here, including a fourth down in Illinois territory, before eventually punching it in for a touchdown with C.J. Donaldson Jr. again. Quick thing to note as well, Jeremiah Smith would be out for a little bit, because on this 3-yard run here, which ended up being an end around, one of the Illinois D-backs actually got a good low tackle on him, but it kind of shook him up a little bit. He kind of landed awkwardly in his shoulder area, and then he was on the sideline screaming about his back hurting. Definitely a rough situation, but they still managed nonetheless. And then this would be kind of the final nail in the coffin for Illinois right here. Because, again, you opened up the quarter responding well, but you were still at a heavy disadvantage. As long as you protected the ball, you probably would have been fine, but they could not manage to do that. And honestly, this was a damn good play from Jermaine Matthews Jr. yet again. Now I'll get to this other game in a second, but essentially, I'll mention it. One of the safeties on this particular team did not do so high in terms of applying pressure on the quarterback. Yet, Jermaine Matthews Jr. showed him exactly how it was done. Crept right around on the corner blitz and got a hand on Altmyer to where he got distracted and lost the football. Caden Curry eventually picked that up, and Ohio State took the ball away again, gave themselves another short field to work with, and bam. To open up the fourth quarter, Jeremiah Smith would be healthy. He would go back in for a fade route to give them the score. Yes, the Fighting Illini would get a touchdown later on, with Altmyer throwing one to Colin Dixon, but by that point, it was already done. Every single pivotal moment was compounded on by Ohio State by forcing a takeaway on this Illinois team. And that made pretty much all the difference here. Like, I shit you not, man. We're talking about an interception that led to a touchdown. So that's already 7 points right there. A turnover on downs that led to 3 free points. So that's 10. Then fucking 17 points off of turnovers, technically, when you factor in this fumble by Valentine here. And then 24 points off of turnovers following the fumble by Altmyer. You've got to protect the damn football in a game like this. You just couldn't have it happen. So it's definitely a tough loss that Illinois would suffer. 34-16 against Ohio State. For the numbers, Julian Sain would have 166 passing yards on 74% completion and 2 touchdown passes. As a team, Ohio State would have 109 rushing yards, and C.J. Donaldson Jr. would have the 2 rushing touchdowns here. Jeremiah Smith had 5 receptions for 42 yards and a touchdown. Carnell Tate had 4 receptions for 41 yards and no score. And Max Clare had 4 receptions for 38 yards. Meanwhile, for Illinois, Altmyer had like his 2nd interception of the season, they mentioned. Or like maybe 2nd turnover. I don't know. He's usually been a very passive quarterback when it comes to turning the ball over. So this is rare to see. But he would also have 248 yards on 68.2% completion, along with the touchdown pass to Dixon. Lafferty would have 50 rushing yards on 8 carries and a score. And Rusk would have 68 yards on 5 receptions, while Beatty, after a hot week last week, would have 48 receiving yards on 7 catches. Man, I can't speak. What the hell? Okay. Like, yeah, I don't know. They just had to do a much better job, man. It is like, hey, Ohio State kept it rolling, getting 8 consecutive wins against ranked opponents, and Illinois, in some capacity, is now 3-14 all time. I think in terms of matchups of this sort at home, or maybe that is against Ohio State. I might have been misreading that one. So, I don't know, like, Ohio State, honestly, again, the combo of that timely offense and that defense just makes them incredibly dangerous. While Illinois moves on to a bye. And then they have Washington in the next game. I mean, that should be interesting, given the way how Washington has looked. Even though I'm not going to really focus on that particular game. I will say, man, Williams Jr., even with him kind of, having a bit of a rough one against Ohio State, like, he honestly did fine. And, man, for him to do what he did on Friday night, accounting for pretty much over 500 yards of offense by himself, is absolutely fucking crazy. That could pose a challenge for Illinois. Like, and Ohio State is definitely a weapon in their own right, but Sain is not as mobile as Williams Jr. Not even close. That could pose a problem if they don't get it together. Man, they got time to rest up, look at the film. And I mean, hey, their defense at the very least, again, they gotta kind of stick to their guns. Losing a game like that will certainly test your will, but at the same time, again, it is hard for a defense to consistently not break when you are giving up the field position advantage that consistently, it's hard. So you, as an offense, put them in an unwinnable situation. They couldn't have done much better than they did. And they led to their second loss of the season, unfortunately for them. All right, moving on to number 8, Alabama, and number 14, Mizzou. There was a graphic that mentioned Missouri had scored on all of their opening drives in all of their games this season, which makes sense given how they've been undefeated to start the year before entering this game. The combination of Pribula and Hardy when it comes to running the football was definitely something that Alabama was going to have to account for. I mean, yes, Vanderbilt, in the same way last week, definitely has their own dominant attack in the rushing game. And they neutralized that, for the most part. They're going to have to do the same thing here. And it was a tougher challenge. I mean, Pribula had the combination of using his athleticism. Obviously, he was a transfer from Penn State, so that makes a lot of fucking sense. But then you also have Ahmad Hardy in this game, who really was going to be the key guy. Not only had he had the highest amount of yards per game in the nation, but he also has forced the most missed tackles in the nation. And that still stands even after this game did finish. So naturally on this first drive, he would get his a little bit. But it was the threat of Pribula that really just put this thing on ice for them. Not only would he manage to get a 23-yard run, but he would also throw an absolute just laser over to an open Norfleet, one of their tight ends, and he was able to just run free for a 26-yard touchdown. So like that can never happen if you are a player on the Crimson Tide. But even with that lapse in defensive judgment, they'd have an immediate response up their sleeve. Now, it did take some work. And I really don't know how to explain this one. Because one of their guys in Carnell would actually manage to get a pretty good TFL on Jeremy Bernard here. Yet, one of the other Mizzou defenders got tagged for unsportsmanlike conduct, nullifying the play. And that can be absolutely brutal because that was a 3rd and 15. But Carnell said, fuck all that, I'm just going to do this shit again. And he did, making sure that Miller didn't get any gain of yardage on this next play. But even with all that being said, as much as they were trying to limit Jam Miller, they couldn't forget about the fucking Jalen Waddle clone at all. And they made a brutal mistake as he would manage to pick up a first down with an 18-yard gain here. Legitimately high-pointed the ball and got blown up a little bit. But it was all good. They continued to keep it going, and it would be Riley, one of their other running backs, who would get a 6-yard touchdown catch to even up the score. The Bama squad would then force a 3-and-out here before the offense would start off the second quarter accordingly. Now, this did come at a little bit of a cost. Derek Meadows, one of their freshmen, was actually trying to get a pass from Simpson here, gets thrown his way, but it ended up being a hospital ball like crazy, bro. He had it in his hands for a second, but he just takes an absolute shot to the head from this defensive player for Mizzou. And the second that shit happened, he got knocked unconscious. It's like, that is not ever a good sign. Now, he would be taken off of the field It's like, damn, like, this is his opportunity. He was trying to make the most of probably one of the few reps that he would get on a per game basis as a true freshman. And that's just nasty work, man. Man. Regardless, it was still going to be the Jam Miller show for a little bit. They knew this. And while he would do the deed and drive them down even further, Ty Simpson would take it upon himself to go on and just thread the needle on this damn girl. Like I said, man, he is legitimately dangerous throwing the ball over the middle. This man, Isaiah Horton, essentially ran a sort of like speed dig route or something, kind of running all the way out and then cutting back in slightly. And it got the defense enough, so he got the leverage. But Simpson still had to deliver the goods. And man, it was an exceptional throw from him to give the Crimson Tide a 14-7 lead. Once again, Mizzou was held up. But I don't know. It's like, it shouldn't have even gotten to as long of a drive as it ended up being. Because this is the play that I'm talking about right here. He got 2nd and 9. And Sapp comes crashing in, trying to wreck Pribula in the backfield. Okay? Now he gets there. And he misses him. He whiffs. Pribula scampers right out to his left. And damn near picks up a first down by himself. That shit cannot happen. It is like, yo, if you're gonna have that kind of space to get in there, you've got to capitalize on that opportunity. You can't have that kind of a whiff. And I mean, unironically enough, we get to later play in this drive. Other people tended to understand the assignment because Pribula got combo sacked by Overton and Keeley in the backfield. And then they punted the ball again. Alabama would extend the good fortune after a long Ty Simpson run with Talty hitting a 46-yard field goal. Both teams would essentially go 3 and out before Mizzou, to end off the half, would kick a field goal yet again. This time with Meyer hitting a 35-yarder to make it a 7-point game at the break. Now on this play, Simpson definitely put himself in a tough spot. I mean, you could argue that he held on to the ball for a little too much time, but at the same time, everything on this particular play might not have developed. Regardless, the O-line just deteriorated so fucking quickly, and the interior especially allow this guy to rush in so freely. They also got into Simpson's way as he was trying to make something happen. And as a result, he ended up losing the football, with the Mizzou defense getting it right back and giving themselves an easy opportunity to score, which would happen. Pribula quite literally took an option play and shook the living fuck out of Bray Hubbard, who is actually a person named to like all SEC defense or something like that last season. If I believe, there's no fucking way you should be getting done like this, bro. He quite literally made that man touch earth. That was absolutely embarrassing. But that was pretty much most of the majority, rather, of the fireworks in this particular quarter, at least. I mean, both defenses started to tighten up on each other, at least in this sequence here, as both teams would punt. And this Bama drive was strange. I mean, they would respond with a long drive. They got 17 plays in and got 66 yards on this particular drive. with Jam Miller again, whether it was him being out of the backfield and utilizing space or whether it was him rushing up the gut. It was his time to truly make something happen for the most part. They leaned on him quite literally. Yet, just when I thought that this man had scored a touchdown, Ty Simpson was actually ruled down because he quite literally tripped over his own lineman, and then as he was handing it off, his knee touched the damn ground. I'm like, what kind of fuck shit is that? Anyways, Talty at least would hit the field goal for them to give them a slight lead. He'd become important later. This fourth quarter, keeping that in mind, was just chaos. I mean, to start it off, I don't know what the hell got into Pribula. Maybe it is a part of the tendencies from the school of which he came from. Alright? But when it came to him throwing the ball, he just started making some very, very stupid decisions. Very stupid decisions. Like, I don't know. Even though they had a little bit of promise with Norfleet picking up a first down here, he just completely overshot his man. Bray Hubbard, there shouldn't have even been a chance for him to get a pick here if he places the ball in the right spot for the receiver to go and get it. So far over his head, and Hubbard just dove for the interception. Got himself a free one. Thinking it's smooth sailing for Alabama? And absolutely not. They would make very minimal progress here. And Salty would just completely whiff on a 49-yard field goal attempt. But wait, there is more. Because Hardy, again, when it mattered the most, you have to credit the Crimson Tide defense. They limited the amount of damage that he could do. They did not allow him to pick up a massive amount of yardage. I don't really know why Mizzou would still decide to go for it on a fourth down here, though. And that really ended up coming back to haunt them. Because this ended up being a fake punt, and the brother would be stopped short, giving Alabama a short field to work with, and yet still they took a decent amount of time off. You have to credit this Brooks person as well. The Waddle clone, when they absolutely had to have a fourth down pickup, even though they might not have necessarily had to go for it, I mean, he hauled it in on the sideline to not only pick up 29 yards, but again, ensure that at the very least, Alabama was going to come away with something on this drive as long as they protected the football, which they did. As on a different fourth down, and this time from the 1 yard line, Hill will get a touchdown catch. I don't know why the Mizzou defense left them that wide open. They're lost, quite literally. They would take the lead here, increasing it to 10. Out of vanity, Mizzou would get themselves going. I mean, if Pribula would have had this kind of urgency and, I guess, efficiency in the passing game a lot earlier in the quarter, they wouldn't have had to battle back like this. But Oleg Buddy, one of their wide receivers, would get in for a score on this play to make it a 27-24 game. And better yet, Mizzou, with them forcing Alabama to go 3-and-out, have one final chance at making something happen. Now, again, Pribula and Oleg Buddy must have just been locked in because he had a pretty good conversion on this play right here. But Johnson was also a different player who was running some exceptional routes. And not only was there a situation earlier in the game where he missed Johnson completely on a scramble drill to where Johnson probably would have scored a touchdown here. But this damn interception also proved to be brutal. And I couldn't blame Johnson after the play happened for literally screaming for the ball and just pouting afterwards. Because he was wide open. At that point, it's not like you're forced to have to score a touchdown in this situation because it's a 3-point game. All you need to do at that point with 43 seconds left is protect the ball, keep things short. You don't need it all back in one play. And yet, Pribula tries to go for the money ball. He is promptly stopped in his tracks by the Alabama defense. Like, you shoot for Olabode in the seam, and again, if you're going to do that, fine. It's got to be thrown only to where he can get it. So why is it that Olabode, yes, he would probably have to jump for the ball, but even then, it's still out of his reach. And Pribula promptly paid the price, with Lee Jr. getting an interception on him yet again to cap off the game and give Alabama the 27-24 win. I mean, say what you want about Alabama, and yes, the Florida State loss was certainly a tough one for them to open up the season, but it's about getting hot at the right time in a situation like this, and they have been rolling, to say the least. Todd Simpson, again, since that game, has been exceptional for the most part. 3 touchdown passes here and 200 yards with 74.2% completion. Jam Miller would have 85 yards on 20 carries, and Brooks, the damn Waddle clone, would have 4 receptions for 58 yards, while Isaiah Horton would have 3 receptions for 34 yards and a touchdown. I do believe that Ryan Williams was hurt, which would explain why he didn't play in this game. That was certainly tough, but again, they still managed to thug it out. That's all you can ask for. As for Mizzou, Pribula would have 228 total yards with 3 total touchdowns, including 2 passing and 2 interceptions. Paltry 57.1% completion, though. Like, what the fuck, man? Oh my gosh, bro. Hardy, again, held in check. For a man that had been averaging like 100 plus, probably much higher than that, in fact. He was held to 52 in this game. You have to give massive respect to them for accomplishing that. Because it's been difficult for a lot of the other competition that they faced. But hey, this Crimson Tide defense, they were up for the challenge. And they made it a living hell for him, for the most part. Meanwhile, Olabode would have 55 yards on 3 receptions, and Norfleet would have 38 yards and a touchdown on 3 receptions as well. All right, moving on to number 6, Oklahoma versus now unranked Texas. And I'm not going to lie, for the most part, this was a defensive bout that even with Oklahoma having a 3-point lead at halftime, Texas was winning from that respect. I mean, yes, the Sooners got the action started off with Mateer doing John Mateer things in getting them on the board with a field goal here. But, bro, especially when you look at how he did against pressure from this Texas defense. And again, it was about time they started playing like this against their competition as well. Because I don't know what the fuck has been going on in the last couple of games. Just generally from them. They've been completely off. And it's like they have the talent to be an elite defense. So why exactly did they allow Florida to do what they did to them? I don't know. I mean, they left no chance for that to happen here. I tell you, man. Even with their offense really doing a poor job for the most part of picking it up, yeah, their defense made sure that they continued to have chance after chance in this game. Not only did they force the Sooners into multiple punts here, but they also just forced John Mateer to make bad decision after bad decision. I'm talking about overthrows, underthrows, general miscommunications, just bad timing in terms of like holding on to the ball for different sacks and stuff. because Colin Simmons, the edge rusher, the elite edge rusher for Texas, kind of made him his bitch, I'm not going to lie. And he got a good amount of combo sacks in there with other D linemen on that front seven. They completely terrorized them. Then, when it came to him actually throwing the ball, man, that coverage unit was lights out. Muhammad himself had multiple interceptions against him in the first half. And I'll get to that in a second. As for the Texas offense, they did take a while to get things going. Life wasn't much better for Arch Manning either. I mean, Oklahoma was kind of playing them in a similar way. Arch Manning, at that point, was being a little conservative about it because it's like you don't want to build off of that shit with giving this Oklahoma defense turnovers of their own. Like, you know how dangerous they can be themselves. So you don't need to rub more salt on the wound there. Arch Manning definitely had a few rougher reads to start out the game as well, even though for one of the first times this season, he did finally manage to connect with Dante Moore Jr. They need to figure that shit out. It's mostly been Livingstone, though. And that connection would certainly come into play later on. But yeah, even with something like that going down, like, they would always just have something weird happen with them. I couldn't possibly explain to you why the fuck they called back-to-back screenplays for both Quintrevion Wisner and Jack Injuries, and both of them lost 5 yards. Completely setting them back, forcing them into, like, damn near borderline field goal range, depending on how their kicker was, and he ended up fucking missing that field goal. Now, they would have a fine drive from here, and they would manage to get a field goal. But even with Arch Manning leading them down there, a lot of credit goes to Quintrevion Wisner in this game. I mean, not only did he get things started on this particular drive with a 37-yard run, but man, he was consistent. Probably their most consistent player throughout the entire game. All because, he can make different things happen for them whenever he gets out in space. He is always a danger in that regard. And they took full advantage of it. Oklahoma, as the game waned on as well, as they started to tire out, there was absolutely nothing they could do about it. Again, Oklahoma would get a few good plays strung together on this drive. But again, Colin Simmons just getting back there, wrecking Mateer's whole shit up. And yet, Sandow, their field goal kicker, would make it. So we get to a 6-3 situation with Oklahoma having a drive here, and honestly, this is where the bullshit kicks in. I couldn't possibly tell you why the fuck Brent Venables and this team made the decision that they made here. I can't. Alright? They call a timeout at 10 seconds left, and they're pretty much at Texas's 30-yard line. You've seen that Sandow has already had multiple kicks of over 40 yards to this point. And yet, with no timeouts left, you make the decision to go for it on third down. Rather than just take the field goal right there and go up 9-3. I didn't understand that. And then you had this man Mateer throw the most god-awful pass to Muhammad's direction yet again. Like, he was trying to get a post route going, and it's like, that's cool. Muhammad II was playing that the entire way. And he worked his ass for an easy pick to take him into halftime. It was pretty much all Texas in the second half. Because, like I said, as the game waned on, that defense ramped up, Wisner's game ramped up, and special teams would become important too. Like, they started off the third quarter as well as they could. They took damn near half of the quarter away, just matriculating the ball down the field. And even though they had some setbacks with Arch Manning losing a few yards on a sack from none other than R. Mason Thomas, yet again creeping right behind him on his blind side and just completely booming him. he would manage to have a few solid plays as he settled down, getting a nice dump off to Wisner for a few yards. Again, just trying to take what the defense would give him in that situation, because Oklahoma, like Texas's defense, is very stingy in their own right. You're not always going to beat them with a big play. Yet, as they got closer and closer to scoring, that is exactly what would happen. They allowed Dante Moore Jr. to get over the top of the defense untouched. Somebody was supposed to be playing that deep zone in essentially the middle. And yet, Arch Manning, although he kind of, you know what I'm saying, he hung on to it for a little bit. But at that point, again, maybe he just got a little excited seeing what he saw. Like, you're going to leave one of our more dangerous wide receivers wide open in the back of the end zone like that? You couldn't possibly. And right as that happens, he just throws it. Dante Moore, untouched, gets a touchdown catch to give Oklahoma put Oklahoma at a 4-point deficit here. And that would continue as they would be forced to go 3 and out here as well. Now, Texas, again, having the combination of Livingstone, again, just continuing to have this weird chemistry with Arch Manning. But again, also Wisner getting out in space. Like, this damn third down pickup was absolutely insane, man. I mean, like, wow. Even with this going on, even with them being pushed back, the fact that Wisner got a first down right here, just extending the play, checking out multiple defenders, and even fighting for some more extra yardage as the play waned on. Wild stuff. That would pay off for them as they eventually got into field goal range and would do exactly what Oklahoma could have done themselves on that final drive in the first half and kick it at the 30-yard line to give Texas a touchdown lead. Now, it definitely could have been wild for Texas here, especially when you consider that to open the fourth quarter. Yet again, even though John Mateer got a solid pass to Deion Burks to start off the drive, he would have another just ill-fated throw. It was late. It was completely just not even an optimal pass. And it got tipped up, hit the hands, and Oklahoma defense would get it again. Yet, Texas would miss the field goal on the next drive. That still wasn't enough. Mateer, when they ramped up that heat, even though he's been a good quarterback for Oklahoma so far, and again, even some of the broadcasters, some of the analysts in post-game would try to give him a little bit of grace, saying that he just looked unsettled. He didn't look like he was really in the flow of the game. He looked disoriented. He looked exactly like a person that missed a lot of time due to injury. And I can get on that. But at the same time, bro, the contrast from one point to another was way too great to just chalk it up to that. Because we've seen a lot of other players miss a substantial amount of time and come back in playing just fine. You have to, you can't do the Texas defense like that. They've been through their shit this season, but they completely changed the entire complexion of this game. And they forced Sean Mateer to do these things. It wasn't him just having an off day. But now comes the special teams. It was already bad enough that a fumble was forced, and yet that still didn't really help them at all. In fact, it pushed them back only further. Because it was not a lost fumble, but it ended up going out of bounds as they lost 13 fucking yards on it. Eventually, they'd have to punt, and yet it would be Niblett, one of their gunners here, their punt returner on this particular play, getting a 75-yard punt return touchdown to make this a 20-6 ball game. And for a last gasp of effort, I guess, Oklahoma would try. They knew it was 4-down territory, and yet Taft, Simmons, and that coverage unit were all on Mateer's ass. He couldn't do anything. They turned the ball over on downs, and Texas would get another field goal, kind of dominating this iteration of the Red River Rivalry, even though this wouldn't officially be the case between the two, I don't believe, at least. Or maybe I'm just tweaking. Nonetheless, they would get the better of them here, winning 23-6, and giving Oklahoma their first win, first loss of the season. A truly brutal one at that. But Texas is accustomed to this kind of thing every now and then, I guess, as this is their fourth win in school history versus an AP Top 10 Oklahoma team, and they are tied with Oklahoma State in that regard. The fact that we don't have Bedlam as a fucking rivalry anymore at this moment is a fucking crime. That's a totally different conversation. As for the numbers here, Arch Manning, again, even though, there are a little bit of just mistakes from him in this one, it's par for the course. And honestly, even though the numbers won't really do it justice, he had his finest outing. 166 yards on 27 passes and a touchdown on 77.8% completion might not really jump off the page for anybody. He also had 34 rushing yards on the ground, but at the same time, he protected the damn ball. He, again, didn't try to play all this hero ball shit. No, he just took what the defense gave him, and, he led a few solid drives down the field. It helped that the defense stepped up tremendously, but sometimes to win ball games, that's what it takes. And especially when you look at it from his perspective, this is Arch Manning's first win as a starting quarterback on the road and away from home. Not at a neutral site game, not at a home game against an inferior opponent. A true road test for him, and he won it. Even if it might not have looked as appealing, he got the job done. And that's all you can ask for against a very good Oklahoma team coming into this. Dante Moore Jr. would have 3 receptions for 50 yards, and Ryan Wingo would have 5 receptions for 35 yards. Meanwhile, Wisner, again, he himself might have been the MVP of the fucking game. Even without scoring a touchdown, he accounted for 27 total touches and 128 total yards. Absolute beast in this game. Again, once we got fully into it, there was nothing that Oklahoma could do about guarding him specifically. Actually crazy stuff, man. As for Oklahoma, John Mateer, 202 passing yards, 3 interceptions. And again, split it down even further when he was under pressure. There's a graphic they displayed on ESPN stating that this man was 4 of 13 for 25 passing yards and 3 picks. There have been games this season where Mateer has done exceptionally well against the blitz. And yet, in this game, he could not get that job done. That is definitely something that will have to be cleaned up. That could be a true problem for Oklahoma if they don't get that together right now. Because again, the SEC competition is only ramping up from this point forward. You're not going to get away with that. And they certainly did not here. It also, again, hurts that they still do not have a running game to speak of. outside of John Mateer. And I don't know, like, it seems like these running backs are good enough in terms of talent, but they cannot produce. When outside of Mateer, and even including them, 30 rushes for 48 yards in any game that is going to be predicated on physicality like this rivalry is, that is certainly not going to help you win one. And that is where the over-reliance factor kicks in as well. Because you knew that he was coming off of an injury, so it probably wouldn't be that wise of you to give him 14 carries, and yet they still did anyways. Nobody else could do much of anything to help him out, alleviate some of the pressure. Like, nobody? It's like, come on, man. As for the receiving game, Deion Burks would have 5 receptions for 46 yards, and Isaiah Satania III would have 4 receptions for 61. Absolute madness, man. All right, moving on to number 7, Indiana, at number 3, Oregon, in Autzen Stadium. And she say on the first drive, hey, we're definitely trying to get that crowd fully into it. I mean, it didn't take any time for Dan Lanning to go for it on 4th down like he typically does. And they would not get it there, unfortunately. That would directly lead to Mendoza V getting a dot over to Elijah Sarratt on the first fucking throw of the game for him. And it put them right into field goal range, honestly. They would get a field goal to take the first score here. Both defenses would do a nice job of stopping each other. And Washington, one of the defensive linemen, one of the big defensive linemen, in fact, for that Oregon squad, would just get right over to Mendoza with such ease. Like, he just bulldozed right through the offensive line. There's nothing that they could do about it once he got there. Sacked him in the backfield, and Indiana, like Oregon before, would go 3 and out. It didn't take Dante Moore much time to respond after that. I mean, as I look up, I see a streaking Benson, one of their wide receivers, getting a touchdown here. And then they replay it. It was thrown on an absolutely perfect string, damn near. Like, you can't throw a ball much better than that in that situation. And I don't know what the hell Indiana safety was doing. Like, he was trailing. He must have knew that he got beat, but it's like the man was jogging. And I'm sure that after that, Signetti probably went in on him. Because there's no way. You can't give up in that situation. Like, there is such a thing as recovery speed. You could have still tried. You could have still very much tried to get a swat or something. Even if you were out of position by that point. Rather than just jog down the field and trail him the entire time. Like, what kind of shit was that? I don't know. Anyways, Indiana would not waste time responding in their own right, as it would be the connection between Omar Cooper Jr. and Mendoza to do most of the early damage on this possession before he himself managed to get a pretty solid run off of a quarterback draw. And then it would be the Maryland transfer in Hemby to punch it in for a touchdown. Again, I should have expected that, honestly, given how physical he is. Oregon would go on their own drive in a fair amount of time as well before Sappington would boot in the field goal for them. Then it got very defensive as both, because again, that makes sense. You know, this has been a decent strength for both squads. We saw Oregon clutch it up against Penn State. We saw Indiana hunkered down against Iowa. And again, completely nullify Illinois' offense. They've been in these situations before. And then a battle of wits like that, that's definitely going to break through every now and then at least. They literally force each other into punt after punt after punt. And while Oregon would manage to get a solid drive here with their rushing game, even though Indiana did a decent job, honestly, of limiting that, even with them being potentially dangerous, they would move the ball down the field, with Moore getting a few passes to both Gary Bryant Jr. and then DeCorian Moore as well, before having Sappington potentially get a field goal here. Because at this point, it's just near the end of the half. You give yourself a good amount of momentum heading into the second if you can at least get yourself a lead here. And yet Sappington from 36 yards would miss. That not only gave up field position to Indiana, but they had a decent amount of time themselves to go and score now. Given that you can have a stoppage of the clock following a first down. They also had a couple of timeouts in their back pocket, and again, it didn't take any time for them to get into field goal range themselves. Now, you're wondering, for college football, how the hell is a 58-yard field goal range? Well, this kicker right here might just be a little different. Like, he gets iced, but on that attempt, he cashed it in. No questions asked. Yes, it was at an angle, but it had the right amount of curvature to it, and it got right down in the back of the net. So you want to know what he does on the actual attempt? Hits it in exactly the same fucking spot. And it ends up being good from 58 fucking yards, which actually tied the Indiana school record for longest field goal in their history. So that's an interesting note about that. The third quarter would start about how you'd expect it to. Again, just trading jabs back and forth and back and forth. Tuioti for Oregon is an absolute beast in his own right. And again, obviously, Ugalele is going to get a lot of the attention. But it is just a luxury to have that kind of talent in your front seven. It is. And his contributions would eventually force the 3-and-out. But Oregon would be forced to do the same thing when you factor in that a penalty just kept them from doing much of anything else on this drive. Once again, Indiana would get the ball back, but this time they were pinned back deep. And you have to credit Oregon's punter in Ferguson Reynolds here. You know, he got hit a little bit, but he kicked pretty much a line drive. Had the right amount of bounce on it, and it got down right inside the 2-yard line. It's a perfect execution on that style of punt. And it gave Oregon good field position to work with when they got the ball back. But you could argue that they wasted it. Even though they picked up a first down, they had to pick up a 4th and 9 to do that. And then they still couldn't move the ball all that much. But at least Sappington did get the field goal here. In a game like this, though, that's not always enough. And Indiana would have the perfect response to it, taking a decent amount of time off the clock, being timely with their plays as well, and just having both Sarratt and Hemby dictate how this ended up going. As not only would Hemby get a 22-yard catch here, but you also had them draw a PI that pushed them even closer, and then it would be Hemby once again to get a 2-yard rushing touchdown to give Indiana the 20-13 lead. Now, this fourth quarter was crazy, and they opened it by saying that something wild was on the line for Indiana, because they did constantly reiterate that Indiana, before Kurt Cignetti, has consistently been an underperforming program. Like, they literally have one of the worst, or at least had at this point, one of the worst winning percentages amongst major programs in the nation in college football history. It was just not a good time for them at all. And again, we've seen that in years past. But Cignetti has definitely put them on a major turnaround. Again, in his few seasons there, he's accomplished quite a lot, and they've consistently been winning. The fact that they contended last year is definitely a testament to his coaching. Yet, they had an even bigger beast to slay here. Because in their school history, this would be the 47th try for them. Entering this game in situations where they were facing off against an AP top 5 opponent on the road, they had been 0-46. And they entered this quarter with a lead. If they retained it, it would be their first ever win in this situation in school history. That would be monumental. But they had to hold on. And it was getting very tough to do that. Because, yes, they would force Oregon to punt almost immediately. But they would allow them to get right back in the game. Now, Mendoza V had been doing okay, but he has had his noted struggles against Oregon before. They referenced the 2023 game that he had against them at Cal, in which he just absolutely stunk in that game. And while he had been making decent reads for most of the day, this one was just underwhelming. Like on this third down, again, you don't need to pick up much yardage here, but the play was open. I'll give it that. It looked promising. But Mendoza V, rather than lead him up the field and over to the sideline, he underthrew it. And this allowed Finney Jr., one of the Oregon D-backs, to undercut it exceptionally well. He got the easiest interception of his life and then managed to get a pick 6 off of it. So, just like that, on a drive where, again, if Indiana gets a touchdown here, they put Oregon on the absolute defensive. No, they don't. It's a tie ball game right now. Tough shit. Hey, at the very least, Mendoza V did shake it off. You gotta have short-term memory in a situation like that. And he just soldiered through it, led them on a long and fruitful drive down the field. It eventually ended with Sarratt again not only picking up a 29-yard gain on this second down here, but also just mossing in the end zone for a touchdown, using his physicality to create the separation. Dude was trying to complain about a potential push-off, and you just can't hang with that. You just gotta admit it at that point. And from there, even though Oregon, again, the crowd was definitely going to be on their side, Indiana made it rough for Dante Moore to do anything on this stretch. They would get a field goal here, but it literally took no time for Indiana to force not just one interception on Dante Moore, because you would have one of the defensive tackles on this line swat the ball at the line of scrimmage for their linebacker, I guess, to get a pick on this play. Then, following that field goal drive, you also had Dante Moore throw a different interception right to Jones, one of their other linebackers. And thus, the game was done. Indiana walked out of there with a 30-20 win, retaining their undefeated season to this point, and again, marking the very first time in school history that they would beat someone who was an AP top 5 team on the road. I mean, you gotta give credit where credit is due. Could I have seen that coming? No. But Indiana, again, even compared to the fact that they had started off undefeated last season with Curtis Rourke, man, like, this is just legitimately good stuff from them right now. As for the numbers, Mendoza V would have 215 passing yards and a touchdown with an interception on 64.5% completion. Again, yeah, pick six is tough in that situation. But again, you love to see the progression. I would know that Mendoza would let that get to his head in other situations at Cal. The fact that they have this kind of trust in him on the team, it's definitely emboldened him to do some great things this year. And you saw it in this game. Hemby would have 70 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. While Sarratt would have 8 receptions for 121 yards and a touchdown, while Omar Cooper Jr. had 7 receptions for 58 yards. As for Oregon, they were saying that this was a battle for Heisman candidacy, and outside of the touchdown pass, yeah, Indiana definitely got the better of Dante Moore here. 186 passing yards on 61.8% completion, and 2 interceptions to go with that touchdown. As for their rushing attack, again, wasn't really much to speak of here. Outside of one player that ran for 59 yards on 8 carries, the team as a whole had just 81 rushing yards on 30 carries and 2.7 yards per carry. Damn. And once they limited that, forced Moore to get passes up, played right into Indiana's hand. Benson had the lone 44-yard catch for the score. DeCorian Moore had 4 receptions for 39 yards, and Gary Bryant Jr. had 4 receptions for 37 yards. Moving on to number 15, Michigan at USC at the LA Coliseum. Man, as much as you'd want to look at how both Maeva and Underwood would perform in the situation, the reality is that these damn running backs for both of these teams would dictate exactly how this game would go. I mean, Haynes is legitimately on Heisman candidacy if you ask the right people, and he led the Big Ten in rushing yards. Meanwhile, on the other side, Waymon Jordan, USC running back, is not that far behind Haynes in terms of rushing yards in the Big Ten, and is currently the leader on his team in that category. Both of these teams are deadly efficient heading into this game in terms of yards per run as well. But again, Michigan is more predicated on doing exactly that, while USC is going to try to fool you because they're still going to run a West Coast style offense. We get that at this point. They are trying to vertically stretch that fucking field. But they have that kind of balance to them. So it'll be interesting to see what that would look like. And they got Jordan involved early. There's a nice little screenplay that Maeva had to him. He had to lob it over the defense a little bit because they were right in the area. But it gave Jordan enough room to pick up some extra yardage here. And Maeva was just fucking throwing fucking rockets all over the field to start off the damn drive. Hitting the fucking tight end in the seam, getting McCall Lemon a fucking catch. Everybody was eating on this damn possession. And eventually, while Jordan would lead them down there, it would be Jacoby Lane on a slant route on Michigan's number 20 to get them a score here and give USC a 7-0 lead to open up the game. Even with Haynes being back there, this would be a true test for Underwood. I mean, sure. That Coliseum is going to be packed to hell out with people. Mostly USC fans. That's going to be tricky to navigate. It was a rough first drive for him. Like, there was just brutal miss to McCulley on literally the first drop back. And it's like, oh, that's not good. He also, again, just when it came time for 3rd and long, you just have this attempt to dump it off to Haynes. And he tries to lead him up rather than just throwing it right at him and giving him space to run that way. Haynes is not that long in terms of a wingspan to catch the ball that way, so I don't really know why Underwood would do that. And then he gave him this confused look. How the fuck did you expect him to bring that down? I don't know for the life of me. But they would go 3 and out on this drive. Michigan's number 20 must have been feeling some kind of way about that particular touchdown that was scored on them. Because even though they would pick up a 4th down here to extend their job with Jordan, they would move down the field fairly well. But once this other USC tight end got the ball, number 20 guy absolutely sick of this shit. Like, when I say he popped the fuck out of this nigga, he popped the fuck out of him. Because he got the first down, but as soon as he tried to make a football move, boom! Lit his ass up. Ball popped right out of his grip, and the Michigan defense, just like that, would get it. Like, you talk about hit power, oh my fucking goodness. Like, that was a loud fucking play. And you'd think that they would immediately capitalize off of it. They did, to their credit, drive down the field fairly well, leaning on Justice Haynes, of course. But when it came down to it, they would still not get in field goal range and they would have to punt again. Wasn't too bad because I guess right after that, well, your defense, if you're Michigan, you have to be locked in. You just have to be. And while Lions, one of their tight ends, would manage to get a 21-yard catch to pick up this first down on the scene, Mayava would still get pressured into oblivion by the Michigan front 7, losing yardage on this play, being forced into a 3rd and long, and eventually having to punt yet again. Michigan would have pretty much their most eventful drive of the night, bar none, going on a 14-play, 86-yard one. Again, led mostly by Justice Haynes, but also having Donovan McCulley just make some physical plays as a receiver. Like, I don't know why they kept on putting him in single coverage, especially against number 17 on USC specifically, man. They kept testing him, and there was nothing that he could do about it. Just got constantly boxed out and out-physical by McCulley. And that led to them scoring a touchdown here to tie up the ball game at this point. But brutally for that Michigan team overall, like you've been doing this well against the USC offense, even though they are constantly trying to be as dynamic as possible. In fact, they're like one of the top teams in the nation in terms of yards per game heading into this. They limited that for the better part of the first half, and yet just before it ends, that's when you decide to allow them to go on a long touchdown drive like this. Now, it was Makai Lemon, again, one of the better wide receivers in the Big Ten, getting himself active with a 28-yard catch here. And again, they were moving the ball smartly down the field. They still had a few timeouts of their own, but they were also taking major advantage of the boundaries, working that area of the field as well. And before you knew it, with 27 seconds left and 2 timeouts in their back pocket, they were right inside the Michigan red zone. Before you knew it, Lemon got pretty much the easiest touchdown of his life. Executed that 2-minute drill to perfection, and it gave USC all the momentum heading into halftime. That would pretty much continue in the third quarter. I mean, the Wolverines would try, but they essentially did nothing. Now, granted, that could be attributed to the fact that both teams suffered major injuries at these very running back positions. Yes, Haynes and Jordan, the number 1 and number 2 running backs in rushing yards in the Big Ten, respectively, both went down with injuries at some point, and they were taken out of the game before this third quarter even got underway. You could argue that that might have hurt Michigan to an extent, but it's not like they have bad backups back there. And USC, again, still was in a similar spot to where they have to do what they can to overcome it anyways. Like, it just is what it is. Yet, USC, again, dealing with the same situation, they'd answer the fucking call. They would answer the fucking call. Because you want to know what this man, King Miller, did? Damn near first play, he broke a fucking huge gain. That could have been a touchdown, honestly, if he wasn't caught. And we're talking about this happening on what was a 3rd and 26 from their own 32-yard line. Just breaking right through the gap for an easy gain. And then this drive ended up being all him as he would get in the end zone for a 15-yard touchdown run. With Michigan's offense still being stagnant, it would be King Miller again, this time going all out to the far left side of the field, crushing these damn front 7 people, getting right out in space with great blocking as well. Excellent blocking on some of these plays. Just skates right out, speeds down, and gets 47 yards again. But they would waste this, and I don't know why Jaden Mayava felt the need to do this. At this point, you're in field goal range. You already have high momentum in this game. I get that you're feeling yourself a little bit. You could have just thrown it out of bounds, taken your point. Why did he feel the need to throw it late across his body, back inbounds, to one of the Michigan defenders? At least it was intended for a wide receiver, but it was so badly thrown that he just dove for the interception and got one for free. But even with Michigan getting that kind of help, and even with them driving down the field, with Marshall again at least starting to do some good work in the absence of Haynes, with McCauley getting himself a good catch here, and even Marsh getting a hell of a pass from Underwood on the fucking sidearm action, it would be Underwood who would return the favor and give USC the ball right back. Yikes. Yikes, man. The USC would open up the fourth quarter, getting a field goal, and then it looked like Michigan might have had a chance. I mean, this play, even though, again, their drive in the first half might have been a little better, this one did what it needed to do. And this is all the work of Marsh right here. It starts off with a good pass from Bryce Underwood, but then you also had Marsh get the ball, take one stutter step, and then change his direction like that. And he was gone on the left sideline for a 69-yard touchdown catch. You're looking for a quick score in that situation, they absolutely got it. But they had to get a stop. They couldn't do it. They couldn't do it because the USC offense was just too formidable. It would be a different running back this time after a few passes would take place, leading the way down the field for them, and it was Brian Jackson. You see, this King Miller person was a true freshman, and Brian Jackson Jr., was placed behind him. He would get a fucking 29-yard run for a touchdown on this damn play to make it a 31-13 ball game. And at that point, it was desperation time. You have Michigan get a couple more possessions here with a punt in the middle of it all from USC. But, I mean, they turned the ball over on downs, and you also had the backup throw an interception as well. It ended up being all USC in a 31-13 win. And that's the tricky thing about it, man. It is like once you get this Michigan team in a situation where they have to lean on throwing the ball and you limit their ability to run, you're putting yourself in good hands. That is exactly what the USC squad would do. They understood the assignment. And I mean, you could argue that this is not exactly a direct copy, but don't this kind of remind you of how Texas last season beat Michigan? Obviously at Michigan. But we talking about pretty much damn near the same score. Similar flow in this game compared to that. Again, they did every single thing they needed to here. And it still was not their greatest performance, if you want to get technical with it. Mayava would have 2 touchdown passes and an interception with 265 yards passing on 78.1% completion. But man, these damn USC running backs, in place of Waymon Jordan, stepped up tremendously, especially when you look at King Miller. Coming into this game, he had 152 rushing yards on the season combined. He smashed his career high, getting not just 18 rushes, but also 158 yards in a touchdown run. While Brian Jackson had 5 rushes for 35 yards and a touchdown as well, as I just mentioned. As for Kyle Lemon, he had 9 receptions for 93 yards. And Lions had 2 receptions for 42. While McCree had 2 for 41, and Jacoby Lane had 5 receptions for 35 yards and a touchdown. As for Michigan, Bryce Underwood had 207 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception on 62.5% completion. And -4 rushing yards. Like, they completely wrecked him back there. There were also just weird decisions made by him. Like, he really tried to test one of these damn USC edge rushers that, again, has this long, like, fucking 7-foot plus wingspan. He thought, even while backing up, he could still get a pass off against him. No, that shit got swatted out of the fucking air. Again, stuff like that is going to be learned with time, but that was not a good decision. As for the rushing, Marshall would have 68 rushing yards on 14 carries, and Haynes, when he was in, would have 51 rushing yards on 10 carries. Marsh had 8 receptions for 138 yards and a touchdown, while McCauley would have 3 receptions for 39 yards and a touchdown. It probably would have helped if they could have gotten somebody else involved, though, because nobody else did. Nobody else had more than a catch, and nobody else had more than 16 yards. Yes, they're not an offense that is going to focus on throwing the ball down the field per se, but man, that is just disgusting. It is like, what the fuck? Dude. Just no. Oh yeah, and speaking of repugnant stuff, man, as much as I was trying to really get into talking about this number 21 Arizona State at Utah match, I thought it was going to be a good one. It did not end up being that way. Yes, it did not help that Sam Leavitt was going to be out of this game with a foot injury, as they stated before it even took place. So that was going to hurt a little bit, of course. But, hey, it is about next man up. You still have to find a way to make something happen. They did not. In place of him, they had Jeff Sims. This is a quarterback that played for Georgia Tech and Nebraska before and transferred from there to this school. The second he threw a fucking pass in this game, you could tell that is exactly where he came from. Even though, there is only so much that you can do on short notice, this was not a good performance from him. It wasn't. Like, the offense was just so repulsive being led by this man. They did a decent enough job of running the ball, but again, even then, that Utah defense was holding strong there when it mattered the most, and it still wasn't enough to really produce points for them. They also had situations where they got like a field goal blocked, I believe, which didn't help matters. And I mean, hey, at least you could say that he protected the football, fine. But, man, 47.4% completion for 124 yards in just 3.3 yards per attempt. That is absolutely fucking disgusting. So when you have that kind of shit going down, and you have this Utah team still rolling after an absolute drubbing of West Virginia in their last outing, you figured that they were going to keep it rolling. And even still, like, this was all Utah all game long. All Utah. Dampier put on an absolute fucking masterclass, man. He was just running roughshod over every single one of these Arizona State defenders. It was literally like this team was playing backyard football on them, just trying out anything and everything they could to completely push them into submission. And it wasn't even them just giving up huge runs either. Like, one of these touchdown drives saw Dampier just fire a fucking rocket over to a wide open wide receiver for a 56-yard gain that eventually turned into a rushing touchdown. By the time that this Sims guy managed to lead a touchdown drive with Jordan Tyson getting in on a fucking run for a score instead of a pass, it was too late. They have already established ball control. They'd already been dominating the line of scrimmage. It was over. Dampier, again, still didn't give a fuck. He just kept it going. And then it got so bad, I'm like, okay, I'm about to just dip out of here. Because, again, I thought I was going to get fucking vintage late night Pac-12 football just getting competitive as hell. No, it wasn't even close. And then as soon as I step out there, you have this backup quarterback get in here, and even he, as I'm seeing here, managed to get a rushing touchdown. Like, do you know how disrespectful that is? That in a game that is now fully dictated by how well a team can manage to throw the football down the field, you can still have a game where a team manages to not throw for a single touchdown pass and still beat you by 32 points. That's where we have a fucking problem. I mean, they didn't. They, as a team, had 279 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground on an elite 7 yards per carry. They were legitimately unstoppable. And it's like, at that point, yes, would Sam Leavitt have made this game more competitive? Probably. The man can't play fucking quarterback and safety. You've got to tighten up on that defensive line at some point. There is no reason why something like that should fucking go down. No reason. Dampier by himself had 10 rushes for 120 yards and 3 touchdowns. What the hell? It's just, that's absolutely fucking disrespectful. And Arizona State had no choice but to just take it. It just sucks, man. They get ranked again, and then they're just going to lose it like that. That probably means that Utah creeps back in, because that is a statement win. even if this Arizona State team might not have been at their best without Sam Leavitt, bruh, that sends quite the fucking message, man. So you got to give them their respect there. Man, alright, that'll do it for all the game action that I watched. And as for a couple of developments here, note a quick follow-up. Per reports, and it was also like showcased on ESPN as I was watching, as well, they have now approved the NCAA a single January transfer portal window from January 2nd to 16th. So again, that makes sense. That keeps everything controlled. And I guess that's what they were looking for in this. Once, when I actually reported on the precursor to all this. From that perspective, it makes sense. But it's again, still, as I also said in that video, it's man, and as other coaches as well said before this all even took place, you still have playoff action going on during this time. Yeah, a lot of the bowl games are up, but, what does that really do for the teams that are still actively participating in the CFP at that very moment of time? I don't know. If you want to have all your options open, it'd make much more sense to do it when the full season is done, in my opinion. So to have all of these coaches put extra time and effort into something different from the already crowded routine of anything that relates to playoff work, it just feels like a little bit of an overload in that situation. And that's what you don't want. But I guess for the majority of other teams that, again, are just going to be at home for that time, well, it allows them to get their ducks in a row at least. So I don't know. I guess that's a fair give and take. They felt like, at least. And I guess we'll see how it goes. I guess the thing is, is this going to be initiated immediately, or are they just going to allow it to take place in a later year? I don't know. We'll figure it out, I suppose. That'll definitely be interesting to see. And also, for whatever reason, per a report from Pete Thamel most recently, and then again, it was so outlandish, I had to check it again, and yeah, he wasn't lying. Apparently, the NCAA is getting ever so close to allowing D1 athletes and personnel to bet on pro sports games. And I think it's incredibly fucking stupid. The only thing I have to say about it is this. When it comes to, I guess, athletes just betting in general, how many times have we seen different schools get in trouble for doing this? Most recently, look at what happened with Keishawn Butte in allegations surrounding a gambling pool that he was in with other people at this time in terms of betting on his own games and stuff like that. And y'all gave him hell for that. That got all the coverage in the world. So my thing is, if you're going to have situations like that, that's fine, but then you turn around and allow this practice to take place. It's what was the fucking point of doing all that shit in the first place? If this is supposed to become a thing now, it doesn't really make any sense. I don't know where exactly the consistency is supposed to lie for them. It doesn't make any sense from my perspective. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.